Hi, this is Mike Bale with Bangert. In today's session, we're going to talk about how to make adjustments to accounts payable bills and to receivable invoices within Sage Intacct Construction. So basically, the options that you're going to have in those modules are going to depend on a few things. Number one, they're going to depend on your configuration and what you've elected to turn on and off. And also depending on your workflows, depending on where you're entering data in the system. So options are going to change based on, for example, if you're just going into accounts payable and recording a bill directly in accounts payable versus using the purchasing module, either through a purchase order or a subcontract, and converting that into an AP bill. There's going to be a different workflow to modify or make adjustments to those invoices. And then you throw another option into the mix, and it's based on if you've actually had a cash entry against this bill yet. So if there is a voided check or something against that accounts receivable cash receipt, if there is a record of a payment on those documents, your adjustments are going to be limited even more. So we'll go through each scenario and we'll go from there. What we're going to do first is we're going to go through and show you kind of the different areas in the system where you could turn on or off options for how you want your adjustments to be able to be processed through the system. So I'm going to use accounts payable as example in the beginning. The receivable side is very similar to it as well, but we'll go through that also. So if I go into accounts payable and I go into setup configuration, there's certain functions that are turned on and off or enabled that we're going to assume that you want to check and make sure you have set up the same way before you follow this video. So for example, if I come down into the configuration of accounts payable, you'll see there's some different options. There is enable reversal of unpaid bills. Normally, this is not checked, and we would recommend leaving that off. If you do have that checked, you won't be able to edit an AP bill that hasn't been paid. That basically forces you to create an audit trail for every change that you make as soon as that AP bill is entered into the system. So if you have enable reversals on, you would actually have to reverse an unpaid bill in the system in order to zero it out. In this scenario that we're going to go through today, we're going to assume that that is not turned on so that we're going to have the ability to edit that unpaid bill. So you want to check that as well. And if we go through here, I think that covers it, but we'll just go through again just to make sure there's nothing else I'm missing here. And check your settings. Now, that's the settings in accounts payable. If you are using purchasing and using the workflows, the transaction definition workflows to create vendor invoices in the system through purchasing, which, for the most part, most of the construction subscriptions are going to be doing it this way, where they're actually going to have a purchase order or a subcontract put into the system. And then from there, you're going to have the ability right from the subcontract to convert that to a subcontract AP invoice. And the reason we want to do that is because this way we can track what's open on that commitment, what's been invoiced to date, make sure they don't overbill us, etc. So that process all happens through purchasing. So whether or not you can edit something is going to be determined based on the settings of that transaction definition. So for example, if I go take a look at subcontract invoices transaction definition, that's going to be in purchasing under setup transaction definitions. And when I get in there, you'll see there's my subcontract invoices, and I'll click edit and it'll take me into my configuration of it. And what I'm really looking to do is go over to my security configuration here. And you can see there's document permissions. So there's editing policies. What do you want to happen on this? Are you allowed to edit once it's posted? So we have it turned on all, which means I'm going to be able to edit this at any time, as long as there's no payments against it. But you can also say no editing before it's printed, draft only. Typically, I would recommend leaving it on all. And then the same thing for the delete policy. Do we want to be able to delete this subcontract invoice? Okay, so I have it also set up on all. So you can establish that for every transaction definition. So subcontract invoices is one of them. You might have a separate one for vendors from purchase orders. So there's a vendor invoice here. So you need to make sure when you're going into your instance that before you assume you can or can't edit something, it really depends on how you're set up in your configuration too. Okay, so we're on all. So we have the most flexible settings turned on here. Okay, so once you've established your configurations and you kind of know where and what is turned on and how you can make your edits, let's go through a couple scenarios. So the first scenario is, you know what, we're putting in some AP bills directly in accounts payable. We don't have to worry about purchasing and need to make some adjustments on those AP bills. That could be done directly through accounts payable. So if I take a look at my bills, and the easiest adjustments to make are the ones that have not had any payments against them. So you can see here I have some AP bills that are posted, but they don't have any payments on them, or they would be listed like this, partially paid. So if I want to make some adjustments on this invoice 17, I can simply, the way my system's set up right now, my configuration, I can go into edit and I could come right into the details and I could edit anything on this bill. I could change dates. I could even change vendors if I need it, if I put it to the wrong vendor. I could come in and code it to a project. I could change the expense account. You could do any of that in the system because we have that flexibility turned on and we have no payments against it. So let's say it's promotion, advertising. I can hit post here, and that's going to make an adjustment in your system. And if I go look back at that invoice now, the payable, I can look at the posting details and see, now it's going to advertising. Okay. So you can do that type of thing in there if it hasn't been paid in the system. Now, you can still follow the process of, well, we don't want to make changes after it's posted. We want to make adjustments through the adjustments process over here in the adjustment. So you could still do that, and we'll do that next, but I just wanted to show you that first. So the other scenario is, well, we have AP bill and we paid it, but then we voided it because it was the wrong check number or something like that, and now we need to adjust it. So for example, let's go into this bill right here, this 13 for 5,100. And if I take a look at it right now, I'm able to edit it. So I can come into here and you can see the fields are available and I can make the edits. Let's go and pay it. Let's just do a quick payment on it. So I'm going to select it for payment, 5,100. I'm going to click Pay Now. And I'm just going to quickly take it through the payment process. So that bill has been selected for payment. And now I'm going to come over to here and say print checks. We'll just take it through the process. Pre-printed checks, there's that bill, 5,100. I'm going to print it. I have to pick my checking account. Okay, and I'll hit print. Oh, sorry, got to select it for payment. Print. Okay, so it pops up as the check printout. And then normally you need, at this point, you're going to confirm or void it. We'll confirm it. Okay, then we realized, oh, we shouldn't have paid that. We need to change the amount. We need to change the coding on it. So at that point, we're going to go and void that check. So in the register here, I can go get the check. And I'll just hit view. And I'll see my register. There's the 5,100. And right in your register, you have the ability to click void here. So I'll click void. And I'm going to void it as of today. And I'll click submit. Okay, so that's voided now. If we go back into that bill, you'll notice there's no payment. It says open, pretty much it's a posted bill now. It'll be in your aging, it'll be open as 5100. But if I go into edit now and I try and just edit that invoice, even though our settings are turned on that says we can do it, if you notice now, it does not let me edit it anymore. Once there's a payment record on that document, whether that payment record's been voided or not, you lose the ability to straight up edit that payable. And this is pretty common. We've had a lot of help desk tickets coming in on it, both on the receivables and the payable side. So basically then, what do I need to do if I need to adjust this invoice, if I need to reverse it or delete it out? Here's what you need to do. So I'm going to take note of the expense account, and it was $61.50. And I'm going to go back into accounts payable, and I'm going to go into my adjustments screen. I'm going to hit the plus button because I want to make a new adjustment. I'm going to use the same date as the invoice, so I can adjust it the same date. I'm going to pick my vendor. And you know what? Just to be sure, I'm going to go look again real quick because I wanted to make sure he's the right vendor. Timberline Development. Okay. So let's go back into adjustments. I'm going to pick Timberline Development. And what is it? A debit memo, a credit memo. So in the accounts payable world, a debit memo means I want to reduce what we owe. A credit memo means I want to add to what we owe. And if you get confused like I do a lot, just go and type, hit the question mark, and it'll tell you. Decrease the amount, increase the amount. Okay? So it's a debit memo, and you can reference the original bill number. It doesn't really do anything to it, but you can reference the number. I'm going to leave it blank. And then you come into here and code how you want that credit memo. So it was $61.50 that it went to initially. And because it's a debit memo, you don't put minuses in. It just knows it's the decrease because it's a debit memo. So I'm just going to say 5100. And I entered this at the top level, so I got to be careful and make sure I put my location in. So we'll just say Timberline Construction. So I can go ahead and I can post the adjustment. And that will pre-number it based on your system setup. And there's a debit memo in there now. If I run an aging, so let's go ahead and run an aging, and I'll just select that vendor. And we'll do a view here. You'll notice you have the 5100 invoice in there, and then you have the adjustment showing. Okay, so it's a zero balance, net balance on those two transactions, but if you don't apply them to each other, they will show on this aging forever and ever. So the last step, and you could do this while you're doing a check run, or you can just do it now if it's a full invoice. What you can do is say pay bills. You could vendor range it here. Timberline Developer. Apply the filter. And what you'll notice is there's the 3 open invoices. And you have credits available, credits to apply. So all you really need to do is apply the full credit to that. Okay? Now, if there was more than one credit and you wanted to see the line details on it, you can click here on the line detail. And then when you get here, there's credit details. I know it's a little confusing because it's actually a debit memo, but in this screen, it's actually called a credit to apply. And then you can see here, we just have the one adjustment. But you'd see multiple if you had multiple. So that looks good. So we're going to apply that, credits to apply, and we're going to click Pay Now. One payment request was processed successfully. And now we can say Print Checks. And let's take a look. And now I do not believe you have to print that check because it's a zero effect to it. So now if we go take a look at our aging, let's go to reports. And let's just do that vendor. And let's see what we get. Now you'll notice just by going into that pay bills screen and applying that credit to that invoice, it's no longer open, and I didn't have to take it any further than just going into that pay bill screen. So that does it for that. So that's kind of how you would get a invoice adjustment out if there is some kind of payment record already attached to it. Okay. So now the other scenario is I have a AP bill and it was generated and created from the purchasing module through a convert function, through a subcontract invoice function. Usually you can tell the difference by them here because number one, it's going to give it a different title. So you can see how it says subcontract invoices. And also you'll notice there's no delete button here. Okay, I can't delete it from accounts payable. So some people will assume, well, I can't edit this. What's going on? I can't delete it. I can't edit it. There's no payment against it. You know, I can't come into here and edit it. What's going on? Well, because this generated over in purchasing, that's where the edit needs to happen. It will go and send over the changes to AP bill from purchasing. So let's take a look again at which one that was. So that was for 40,000 Buffalo Glass, 7.5 batch. And now I do believe you can come into this AP bill from here and get to it from right here. So see, there is a document ID that you can follow it back right from the AP bill. So if I click on subcontract invoices, that will take me into the actual subcontract convert bill. I'm going to show you where it is also in purchasing. So if we go over to purchasing, we're going to go into all, and we're going to go into subcontract invoices. Now, we happen to get lucky here, and it's the only one in there, but if there was more, you can filter through it. So now here, I don't have any payments against it, so I can simply come into here. I can edit it if I need to. So now I can come into here and say that should have only been 35. And because it's converted from a subcontract, it'll also adjust the subcontract with what's open and what's been paid to date. And let's go ahead and do that. So let's say that invoice is only for 30,000 instead, and there's 10% retainage. So I could go ahead and post that now. And that will also update the subcontract agreement on what's open and what's not. And if I go over to accounts payable and take a look, you'll notice this invoice now is only for 30,000. Okay, so you don't edit it, so you need to really pay attention to where it comes from. And if you see, it's a good flag here. If you don't see a detailed button on it there, you kind of know. And then, like I said, the numbering here. And then you can go edit it from there. Now you'd have the same situation if you had a payment record against that bill. If it was partially paid, or if it was a payment was applied to it and then voided, something like that, it's really going to lock that. And you'd have to do an adjustment, or you'd have to do a reversal of that invoice. So, if you want to make your adjustments, make sure you try and do those adjustments before you generate any payment record on those invoices. Receivables is going to be very similar. Accounts receivable, if you're doing just a manual invoice, you're going to be able to come into here and see your invoices. The one thing I do want to come in and take a look at real quick is, I didn't think you could do that there. So what you can do in this scenario for receivables is do the same thing. You have adjustment screen here. And you have your customer, same as before. The only difference now is credit memo, debit memo. Credit is the reduction, debit is the increase. So if it's a credit memo, pick your accounts. And then basically when you go into your receive payments, you're going to have the same type of screen that allows you to apply credits against that receivable. So you'll be able to do that as well. So in accounts receivable, for example, we have $1,000 credit already keyed in for Grocers Associated. Now we want to apply it to one of the open invoices. So we have this 1,000 in there. It's the Grocers Association. What you can do here on the receivable side is come into here and say receive payments new. And we're going to click add. And you're going to pick your customer. So that was Grocers Association. And now if you want to apply credits without entering any cash receipts, you would just leave the amount received blank here. And then what you're going to do is click Show Invoices. And you're going to select the invoice that you want the credit to go against. We know it's $1,000. Looks like there's $1,350 owed here. Let's apply it to this invoice. And we'll click Add and Close. And when you do that now, it shows up on the menu below. And now this looks pretty familiar to the accounts payable screen we saw. You have credits available. So you can say we want to apply the $1,000 credit to that. And as of this date, we want to do that. And then I can say post that invoice. Okay. Warning, limit AR credits to entity owners is enabled, which restricts. Okay, so it looks like I must have something turned on that says only let the credits be applied to the same entities or same companies they were created with. And so I must have created a credit that's for a different entity. So, but that's all you would do in your scenario. You'd make sure that's not turned on, or you'd have the same entity for the credit and you'd be fine. And that would apply the credit. Same though does apply. We've had customers who have put an invoice in, put a cash receipt in, applied it to that invoice only to realize it was the wrong invoice after, voided the cash receipt. Well, now they could no longer do adjustments to that invoice because there was a cash receipt entry against it. So in that scenario, you'd have to make an adjustment and apply the credit to the invoice. Same thing goes for deleting if the receivable was created through projects, project contracts, or the order entry module. So in order entry, a lot of times you'll use a quick bill type invoice form, or you'll use under projects, you'll generate a progress billing and AIA form or a time and material view. What these are all doing is they're going to order entry. So just like purchasing had subcontract invoices, order entry has quick bill invoice, project contract invoice, T&M invoice, depending on your different billing scenarios. To edit or delete one of those, you don't do it in accounts receivable. You're going to come into here under project contract invoice, let's say, for example. You'll see a list of your invoices. Now I'm at the top level, so I would actually, let's get into my correct entity here. And I would come into here, and now I would see all my invoices I did. And let's say we need to edit or delete this contract invoice. Your editing is going to be limited because you use the contract, but actually you can edit it on the fly right here because there's no payment records against it. And then you can also just delete it out here. And if you delete it out here, now you can then return it back and redo your progress billing over in the generate invoice screen. So again, if you are using the project billing, which in all likelihood most of you will be doing, you don't want to make the edits or the deletes in accounts receivable. It won't let you. You're going to go into order entry, pick the transaction definition. Now again, this is all dependent on the transaction definition setup. So this holds true for the receivable as well as the purchasing side. I just went into the purchasing side for the transaction definitions, but over in order entry, you have your transaction definitions as well. There's their project contract. There's the work. Now, it gets a little tricky because when you're doing editing, you want to make sure you're at your top level for your configurations. So I'm kind of jumping back and forth here, but let's go back. And then let's go into here, transaction definitions. Now, if I go into project contract invoices and click edit, that same security configuration tab, I want to make sure my edit policy is what I want it to be. Delete all, edit all. Okay, make sure that's set up. And then you'll be able to go in there and delete that project contract from here, and then go ahead and regenerate it from projects. And it will take it out of accounts receivable for you. Okay. So those are basically the different methods for adjusting accounts payable bills and accounts receivable invoices in Sage Intacct. I hope you found this a little bit helpful. And if you have any comments or questions, please either put them in the comment section below or email us at help@bangertinc.com. And thanks for watching. I look forward to chatting again with you guys soon. Thank you.